Hello, I'm APX Toycat, and now the best way to get high in Minecraft is, well, to get high in one of these new sulfur geysers. Speaking of guys, I got this comment and the answer is now, because the TNT sulfur cube actually came to the game. This was a huge meme for a very long time, but it is in fact real. You can in fact punch it, and it can in fact interact with redstone, which is more than a little bit wild. Let's talk about all of the things going on with this, and with everything else in the snapshot, because like a non-existent Cinnabar beetle, this video is going to come to you in 6 separate parts, but let's get started with the very first one, because TNT sulfur cubes now exist, and according to the changelog, this is a brand new archetype of sulfur cubes. That is to say that as well as all of the other things they can do, there is a special variant of the sulfur cube that specifically exists to house TNT. The way they word it makes me think that there could be more of these, but for now let's get into the key bits, which is that the sulfur cube can absorb TNT, and once it does so, it kind of works like regular TNT. It can be primed by redstone torches like you've seen, but also like flint and steel, which is very, very fun, and once you do so, it will have a fuse time of 6 seconds. Just for anyone unaware, this is much longer than regular TNT, and to show you that, here's TNT, and here is a sulfur TNT. If I light this guy on fire and then that guy, you'd expect that this one would detonate first, but because the timer is longer, you can see that now we kind of have this extended fuse ability, which is really, really cool. My immediate thought was, oh, that means that you could probably do something we've never been able to before. Again, I got a little carried away with myself. I thought, wow, we can now launch TNT great distances, without realizing that actually you could technically do this with TNT cannons, but it's a lot easier now, and also it means that unlike TNT cannons, you can attach it to a happy ghast and use it to blow up any undesirable things in your world, or indeed the world of your friends, if you feel like being a bit of a troll. I believe that TNT goes a bit beyond trolling, but you know, some people believe all sorts of crazy things as far as I'm concerned, and so now we just need to mention the fact that if you do have a sulfur cube in a bucket, although right now you can pick up sulfur cubes from other types, as you can see, you can make them out of thin air if you want to, although you can right now pick up sulfur cubes into buckets, is what I mean to say. You won't be able to do this if your sulfur cube has a TNT block in there. So I can pick up this guy, and now he's going to have dirt, but if I try to do the same with an exploding guy, well, I'm going to run into some issues, because once he is primed, he turns into a different state. That different state can't be launched properly from, at least in my experience. You can nudge him, and that might not be wise, but still, we now have a super long duration, a long fuse version of TNT, which is very, very fun. Also, when they explode, no sulfur cubes are spawned, which is maybe obvious to me or you, but still something important that I should mention. Also, this is another level of commensalism. Look at all these sulfur slimes that have spawned and pick up dirt blocks because of the explosions from the sulfur cube. I mentioned before that, like, oh, this is a great example of like sulfur cubes and creepers get along, but now it's sulfur cubes and other sulfur cubes. Just some of those sulfur cubes love to explode for the benefit of their friends. And wow, what a good set of friends they are. Speaking of good friends, wow, that's what I do to my friends. I mean, I do live in London. Anyway, the important thing here is the fact that after going through all of this, it's important to note that there is one other intriguing detail about this update that is considered a new feature in Minecraft's promotional material, and that is the sulfur geyser. So right now, you might see existing in your world sulfur springs, unless you played Bedrock, where they had to be removed. But the sulfur springs are meant to be a part of this end update, and sulfur springs will sometimes generate with this combination. So potent sulfur, this block right here, the extra yellow, extra nice form of sulfur, and then magma, and then water, when combined together, will make this, which as you can see, is a sulfur spring. And so what you want to do with this is, what you'll find happens with this is that if you have this combination together, it will create a geyser, and the geyser will erupt at random intervals, shooting a plume of water particles up, applying an upward impulse to entities above it. I read that directly from the changelog. Wow, wasn't it very good? But more seriously, the kind of end user result is that if you sit in a large enough pool, you'll see that eventually you launch into the air, which is really, really fun and feels like it can be used for all sorts of things. In the same way that people love to use campfires under hay bales to get a lot of smoke, I could see using this for similar purposes, or indeed, you can even imagine like parkour. Like if I just wait for that to happen, then jump into it, now I get a little bit of an extra boost, maybe allowing me to cross a gap or get a big height jump that you just can't get get from a jump boost potion right now, and that you previously, you might have to use an ender pearl or an elite firework rocket. More ways to get a bit of a boost are very, very fun, and although I do think that ultimately for late game, it's always going to be second to the Elytra, as far as fun mini-games and creative possibilities, it really leans into the theme of this update. Although, this does mean that, yes, these are the two big features, so the caves have something interesting going on, but we'll get into. Right off, we talk about the big question of, is this update out on Bedrock? The answer is no. Anyway, moving on to the next topic. I guess more seriously we could say that the Bedrock version is having a really hard time with the Chaos Cubed update. Last week they had to remove realms altogether because for some reason it did not work with that version of the game, and the week before that they had to remove the Sulfur Springs, and so we're getting to the point where lots of features simply aren't working together, and there are quite a few Java features that simply don't work here. Also, there's a 3,500 player world. Did you see that? I guess we didn't see that. But what we probably did see is the fact that, therefore, to talk about anything in this week's preview, we have to play Java. And so, hello, I'm Cat, and guess who's in an incredibly cursed Java version of the creative world? This is one of the many things I've been testing for the release of the creative world to the wider public, something I am still aiming to do this summer. Very excited to share more of that with you. But first, I can also say, while we are here, something very interesting, which is all the weird things people are already doing with the Sulfur Geysers. I mean, I've seen people using it. I thought this is incredible, using it to hold up an entire house upside down, but also I saw many people whose immediate first thought was, ha ha ha, there's a bunch of white stuff coming out of something yellow, and decided to do something a little bit cheeky with it. And I've got to say, disappointed in you. That doesn't even work very well. But you know what does work very well? Well, me, hopefully, as I make this video, because I would like to share something quite fun and funky with you. Because if we can switch into the next topic, I'd like to say that there is an important big piece of feedback that Mojang has been given about last week's beta preview and snapshot, where they changed the Sulfur Caves to add in granite and add in tough. Indeed, this was unpopular with basically everyone, something that surprised even the art director for Minecraft, Japper. This was something I couldn't show you last week because it was on a private Discord server, but he's come out and said it publicly that, yeah, actually, the feedback has been surprising, and I assumed that the feedback being surprising was a sign that they probably weren't going to move forward, given there's been far more negative feedback about the caves than there has been about, say, the sulfur textures, which they've changed about 2 or 3 times. So what exactly is happening with the caves? Bad news, they've done absolutely nothing to it, and so seemingly this piece of feedback at least hasn't been a part of this week's snapshot. Maybe it will feature in the beta and preview, which, if you're curious, has not released because it is going to be coming out tomorrow, although it sounds like it won't necessarily have all of the features from Java yet, but maybe they spent some time working on the world gen there. I could suspect and I could hope, but realistically, right now we still have the big question of what are Mojang going to do? I think granite has been at least accepted as a part of the Sulfur Caves. It's a nice blur between the yellow and the red, or as a comment once put it, the 2 colors that your pea can be. So it's nice to have something a bit more in between, but what's interesting is this idea that the tough just doesn't really fit. I'm not the only one to say that. It might be a great building block to have, but it's not a great fit for the Sulfur Caves and really tones everything down. So here's the question, what should replace it? And just for fun, I've got a few examples to share with you. The first is it could be calcite, although as I showed it off last week, I feel like this is a bit too distracting, so a good replacement that fits the same vibe is andesite. Although this has the same problem of being super grey, now that we know magma fits, this could be a really nice combo. Oh yeah, look at that magma right there. And I think that this is a decent argument, but I think that maybe we could make a better case for, given that we now know that TNT sulfur cubes exist and clearly are a great part of the ecosystem of sulfur slimes, maybe sand or sandstone could be the better in-between ingredient. Which of these do you think looks the best? And if so, I hope you work at Mojang, because then you could implement it. And indeed, do you think that any of these work, or should there just not be a 4th block? Should it just be the sulfur, the granite, and the cinnabar that exist right now? Well, that is a hard question, and sadly, I don't have any great answers. Although I do know, okay, this is something, one of the weirdest Java-only features is when you're in spectator mode, you can jump into a mob. I want to know what happens if we go into a sulfur cube that is about to explode. You know, like POV, you disagree with the actions of the government and have decided to take matters into your own hands. Okay, so what we're going to do is we have to be really, really fast about this one. But let's light it on fire, then quickly go into spectator. and then quickly become the sulfur cube. Go. Okay, spectator. I'm in. Oh. Ah! That's the what? That is the most anticlimactic thing I've ever done. But you know what else is anticlimactic? A question I get all the time when I cover the latest beta previews and snapshots is when exactly is the update coming out? And so the release date for Title Update 26, Title Update 2D, the 26.2 update, or 26.30 if you're on Bedrock, is actually very interesting because usually we'd be able to get a pretty good idea at this point, but I think that Mojang are waiting for this announcement because if you check any of their social feeds, they are promoting TwitchCon like crazy, and TwitchCon, to give them credit, is promoting Minecraft like crazy. This is the biggest Mojang presence at any non-Minecon event that I think we've seen ever, and they are making a big deal of this fact, and so I think there is a big announcement coming. Now, to be fair, that big announcement could be for one of their other games. Dungeons 2 and its weird weapons and things could be getting a big trailer and announcement coming fairly soon. That is entirely true. It could be that it's something far bigger than the Chaos Cubed, but based on the fact that Mojang are being kind of, subtle about it and are making such a big deal about their TwitchCon presence, either they've got some contractual obligations to fill, or perhaps, I think more excitingly, there is some big announcement coming, and that big announcement is at least the Chaos Cubed update, but maybe it's even more. We will find out between now and then, but if you're curious as to when this update will be coming out, the answer is almost certainly June, the 5th, the 12th, the 19th, the 26th. It's hard to say which of those until we know for sure, but what I will say is we're probably leaning towards the edge of that, because although we don't have confirmation the update is feature complete, it's not just all of the new features Bedrock has to add, they have to add all of the existing ones which haven't properly gone over. Speaking of existing things not properly going over, I think the sun is setting. No, it's just that dark all the time, huh? Anyway, speaking of dark all the time, let's go into my favorite crossing of questionable intent. And let me show you something which I think is interesting, because the ability to have a sulfur cube and have a TNT inside of it and have that be detonated by redstone is something that they technically hinted in last week's preview. They had this line on the changelog saying added the redstone strength at position entity filter that tests the redstone signal strength at the subject entity's position. In other words, last week they added the background code to make this week's feature possible, which is not just a sign that this is coming to Bedrock, perhaps as soon as tomorrow, but also it's an interesting sign that yes, for the 4th time just within the drop system, they've added something for the add-on or for the technical side of the game that has later revealed what a feature would be. They added the ability for blocks to be picked up by mobs besides the Enderman, and then the Copper Golem came to the game. They added the ability for flying mounts, and then we got the Happy Gas, and so what exactly is it that Mojang are hinting at for the future? Well, it used to be that everyone was saying for sure, yeah, we'll get a second mob in this update. Mojang love their mobs, and a blob seems quite likely. I think given they've just added the Sulfur Cube, instead it seems more likely that we could get more Sulfur Cube archetypes than we have right now. A piston is a fun example, but I also think you could literally do fun things with redstone inside of them that could be really fun. But I also think that if we look at previous betas, like how you can look at this one, last week's beta contains this section about loot tables, and so is this something that hints that maybe there is a new loot table coming to Minecraft, and therefore my biggest dream for this cave update would be maybe a brand new structure? Is that in fact coming? Well, honestly, probably not. But this is the fun thing, isn't it? Because unlike the wild speculation you can sometimes do based on looking at Minecraft's social tweets, it was for the literal first drop that was, I think the first one after the Garden Awakens. It was the Spring to Life drop where they did a little hint using TikTok teasers and stuff, and then they basically gave up on that as a format. So now if you follow Minecraft's TikToks or their Instagrams or their tweets and you think they're talking about stuff, nope, it's just usually something to do with the marketplace or it's a meme, but it seems as though this is where our actual look into the future seems to come, and so I'll be paying a lot more attention is all I'll say. But what do you have to say? Let me know in the comments. Do you actually know? Don't let me know. I don't care about what you have to say, but what I do care I actually do, but if you say I care, you know, I want to see what you say without my influence on that. Just like how I'd like you to like the video without my influence, and consider subscribing if you like seeing more of these videos, but not because I'm telling you to do so. Interestingly, we got to within, I think, 10 subscribers of 1.95 million, and then we had a little bit of a dip down below that. Very tragic time, but if you want to subscribe, then you'll see more videos like this, and otherwise, you can check out my live stream today, and yeah, we've got a lot of fun stuff coming this way. I have an update on how well the Minecraft affiliate thing went, but I need to read the contract I signed to see if I can tell you, but it's hilarious. You're gonna love the information that I have to share soon, I guess. Anyway, thank you, and goodbye.